Okay, so first I'm just going to start by asking you to introduce yourself and to say what graduate psychology degree you are earning and how far along you are in the program.
Okay. So what's going on? My name is Destin. I am a first year post-bac doctoral student in the counseling psychology PhD program. So I'm earning my PhD in counseling psychology.
Cool. Um, so this is an off-track question, but with the doctoral program, do you have to do like a master's first, like in the process, or like how does that work? Like going straight from like bachelor's to like the
Yeah.
doctorate.
So a lot of people do come in with masters, but there's some people like me who don't. So technically, I'm working on getting my master's while also getting my PhD. So I definitely have to have my master's first. So a lot of my coursework now looks like master's coursework. But good thing is there's a lot of overlap with PhD coursework. So I'm doing master's coursework now, and then I get my master's and I'll be officially like all only on PhD coursework now.
Okay.
So
So
it's a mix of both.
Is that like an advantage, or like what would you say to people who are considering like getting their master's separately and then going into a PhD, or like going on this track like you did, get your PhD and master's kind of at the same time?
Yeah. I do slightly feel like I have a small advantage, primarily because I'm at the University of Kentucky. So I have all the requirements that they need getting into their PhD program. So, like class wise, where sometimes when people have their masters and they transfer or get accepted into a PhD programs, the overlap in the courses are not always perfectly aligned. So sometimes they may have to retake courses. But also, there is some disadvantages too, because master's students are very skilled. You know, they have that experience that I would not have coming straight out of out of undergrad. So there's some disadvantages and some advantages depending on how you look at it. But I think either way, either way is a good route.
Okay, so it just kind of depends on the person and what they're looking for.
Yeah.
Okay. So when did you decide that you wanted to go to graduate school or like pursue like higher education?
So for a long time, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had met a mentor. She took me on her wing, Dr. Aisha Mesker. She's a professor in the clinical psychology program at the University of Georgia. And she was telling me all the benefits of getting a PhD. And she said she can see it in me. And she definitely recommended that I did that. Before that, I was thinking, look, I'll get a master's, I'll practice, and we'll keep it pushing. But she really pushed me. And that was my first professor of color. And she pushed me to get into this PhD program. She shaped me for it. She groomed me for it. So it was just definitely a blessing to be able to, transition and actually make it here, because it definitely was a lot of hard work. But it was just that inspiration from her and knowing the impact and reach I can have with having a PhD that really inspired me to just take it here.
Okay. So what are some of the steps that you took, like maybe practical steps or even like non-practical steps, like whenever you decided that, okay, that's something that you want to do? What are some steps that you took to kind of get yourself to that level of going into graduate school?
Yes. So I'd say research. So admittedly, I'm not the most research heavy type of guy. Like I'm not a huge researcher, but I did know it was very important for what I wanted to do in the future. And also was very important for getting into a PhD program. So I just got the most research experience that I can get. Of course, coming in post-bac, they don't expect you to have to be an expert at research yet, but just to show that you have some interest in it and you can do it. I had to get that experience, which was you can find research anywhere. I mean, everybody's looking for a research assistant to a degree. So I got research. I got very involved in like clinical work. So I was an intern at a clinic at UGA. And I also had a gap year. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier, but I took a gap year where I was an ABA therapist. So I got to experience what therapy looks like. And ABA therapy is with autistic children. And that's not the route I want to go. Right. But it was still good to get your hands and feet wet with the field. So, I did clinical work. I did research, and I definitely just looked into schools to see what's best fitting for me and what I wanted to do. So a lot of self-work to find out what exactly I wanted to do with my PhD. And how I want it to be trained and what type of training I want and who I want it to be trained under and trained with. Like all of those things kind of helped me and groom me to be ready for a PhD program.
Okay. The next question is kind of how did you decide on which specific PhD program to choose, like the counseling, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like how did you decide between maybe counseling, clinical, and like all the other different kinds of psychology degrees are out there?
Yeah. So for me, it was always between clinical and counseling psychology. Clinical because I was trained under a clinical psychologist. She literally taught me everything she knew. So my first wave of applying, so really quickly, I didn't get accepted to any of the schools I applied to my first year applying, straight out of undergrad. And I applied to only clinical programs. And devastating experience as it was, I'm so thankful it happened because I am not a clinical psychologist. Like there's nothing I want to do with that realm. So during my gap year, I did a lot of reading and I found out the difference between clinical and counseling. And for me, it's simply the orientation. They view people differently. I like counseling because it views people holistically. And it's not necessarily centered around a disorder. And I think sometimes with clinical, no shade or anything, but sometimes they focus a lot on a disorder. What I think is so important that clinical, they look at, this person as a whole person. And also they emphasize social justice, which is big to me. So I landed on counseling psychologist just because it aligned with what I wanted to do. And I think looking at the way counseling psychologists do research, like they're cool. I think of like Dr. Hargan, like she's researching Black sexual pleasure, which is super cool. And it's fun research. It's fun research, So I think just, looking at what, counseling psychologists research, the work they do, their orientation, things that are important to them. I mean, they're leading the way. And I thought, it'll be a great place for me to train under.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can understand that. And you already talked about kind of how you took a gap year. So what did you do during that time? And would you encourage people who are looking into going to graduate school to like maybe take a gap year or not?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So for me, I've always been this high achiever. So I thought I was going to get into this PhD program. I thought it was going to be easy peasy. And I got humbled real quick. God was like, no, sir, like it's not happening this year. And I said, okay, God, like what you want me to do? Because you planted this dream in me, and now like, what are we gonna do? So it worked out well because I was able to get a break. I've been in school since literally pre-K. I've been in grade school, middle school, high school, undergrad, and I was expecting to go straight into a PhD program. Thank God that God said no. So during my gap year, I got a job to be an ABA therapist. Which is working with autistic children, helping them with language acquisition and problem behavior reduction and just basic life skills in general. That was such a rewarding experience. Something that I know I can't get anywhere else. And I'm so glad I was able to get it during that gap year. But also too, I got to travel to like 5 different countries during my gap year. So I actually got a real break. I got to experience what life is like outside of school. I think sometimes, with academics, we kind of find our worth within academia. So I was forced to find who I was outside of this academic space. So now that I'm coming back, I know that I'm so much more than an academic. So I recommend that people travel and do whatever they want to do during their gap year, But I definitely, I stayed reading. I stayed involved with the field by being a therapist. I stayed involved and up on research. So I was doing really, really small things to make sure that I was continuing to build my resume and my CV, but I was also prioritizing everything else outside of school because school is going to happen,
Yeah.
So yeah, I traveled, I worked, I spent money, I had fun, I hung out with friends, I did everything that people in school typically don't always get the opportunity to do and prioritize.
Yeah, I'm really liking like hearing people like emphasize like the importance of gap year, because I think there's this thing surrounding gap years and people thinking that if you take a gap year you might not come back or you might lose interest, or people who take gap years are lazy or all that stuff, that sort of stigma. So it's kind of nice to hear somebody who did take a gap year and is back kind of talk about some of the benefits of that.
Yeah, definitely necessary.
So next we're gonna move to like expectations. So what are some things that you expected from graduate school? What did you expect it to be like in terms of maybe coursework, research, training, anything? And has your experience so far matched those expectations?
Yeah, so I expected grad school to be the most difficult thing I've ever experienced. I was so afraid of coming in being post-bac because a lot of the students are master students. And there's definitely a gap in experience and knowledge and understanding that, they kind of have an edge over me. And not that it's no competition, but you realize, in certain spaces, like I am probably the least knowledgeable person in this room. So I expected to have to face a big learning curve. And I expected to be embarrassed about it. I expected to be like always boggled down with schoolwork and really, only focused on school. And a lot of those expectations were met. I mean, I definitely had to struggle through and learn and ride the learning curve. That's just a part of it. You got to be able to, do your part to make sure that you're able to catch up and also stay up. You're not alone in that. You have colleagues who are there to help you. You have most people have amazing advisors who can help them. So for me, it was definitely difficult, but it was a good difficult to where like it wasn't unmanageable. I know some expectations that weren't met in a good way is that like I'm not only all about school. Like I have opportunity to do things I love, like paint or hang out with friends or listen to music or go out of town and still do a little bit of traveling here and there. So I definitely think that I got to see what it's like to be a grad student, and it was a very positive experience. At least for me, it was. So it's hard work, but it's not only work. Like you can take breaks if you want to. If you schedule yourself right and do and live life the way you're supposed to, like there's a lot of opportunities for breaks and self-care and things to do things that you love to do.
Okay, that's good to know. So what has been your favorite part of the graduate school experience so far?
Graduate school experience so far. Man, so I don't know people watching this and what their experience would be. So I am strictly online. Like I have never met any of my colleagues in person. I met some of them in person. I mean, on some small little hangouts, but I typically meet them like on Zoom. So I don't know how tall they are, what they look like, and it just kind of, you don't ever get to see these people in person. So my experience is a little different, but I will say I like my lab meetings with my advisor. So she does really good research in regards to like sex. And sex is such an interesting topic to everybody. Some people it's taboo. Some people love to talk about it. Some people shy to talk about it. So it's interesting to have those conversations and realize just how real and candid everybody can be within that space for the purpose of academia. And it showed me that research doesn't have to be something that's so boring or something that, it seems so time consuming, which is most likely going to be time consuming. But I think it's more so along the lines of that it can be fun. The discussions are fun. Doing the research is fun. Writing the papers is fun. Discovering these things are fun. So I think realizing just how fun school can be and should be, because in undergrad, we're taking all the classes we don't want to take. And I'm like, bro, I do not care about calculus. I will never use that. I can count, I can multiply, I can divide, I can do all that, the small math. So there's no need for me to learn anything related to calculus because I'll probably never use it. I'm not a statistician. I really don't care about those things. But like, as it relates to psychology, you realize that like, wow, okay, once it's something that I love to talk about, something I love to research, something I love to do, school becomes a lot more interesting and a lot more purposeful, and it's fun. You know what I'm saying? You enjoy learning to a degree. So my best part is focusing only on psychology because, my whole undergrad career was a mix of, you major in psychology, but you still have these prerequisites that you have to fulfill. So that's a fun part about grad school. And also just, being independent, being able to decide how you want your life to look. Like right now, I'm shaping how I want my career to look. I can decide how much research I want to do. I can decide how much clinical work I want to do. So that's really fun to kind of have that autonomy to really figure out what's the next steps for you going to look like.
And kind of following that question, what is maybe your least favorite part or most challenging part about your graduate school experience so far?
Yeah, I think you're juggling a lot at once. So not only are you a student, but you're also participating in multiple research projects. So you're automatically, for most people at least, I'm not sure it's different person to person, but for most people, you're automatically going to participate in your advisor's research. And then you have a research team and they're all conducting their own individual research. And most of the time it's going to be interesting to you. So you're going to be participating in their research. Like if somebody who's working on a double pandemic study, Jordan, and I'm super interested in it. So I'm like, hey, put me on the team. And also I got my own research interests, right? So I have things that I have to handle in regards to my own research interests. And then we have clinical work that we have to do. We have schoolwork that we have to do. We are humans. We literally have, people have spouses, people have partners, people have dogs, and then we have assistantships. So you're basically juggling a lot. And, if you're good at juggling, that's cool. But sometimes you still can become overwhelmed because you have to worry about, even though if you're juggling these things perfectly, you got to look away and now you got a family issue. You got to look away and now your car is not working today, So it's like, it's a lot of things that you're juggling that can be stressful. And it can be very stressful. But I think, that's what life is all about. Like, I don't know if there'll be any point in my life outside of retirement where even then that I won't be juggling a lot and handling a lot of responsibility. But, as academia continues to unfold and continues to be purposeful, like my advisor is very big on self-care. My colleagues are very big on self-care. So they emphasize that a lot, So you're juggling a lot and it's not necessarily easy, but you have a strong support system of people who would tell you, hey, chill out, put that down. This research can wait. This paper, it's important, but slow it down. You can wait, because a lot of that pressure we put on ourselves to be juggling all that when you really could put two things down and wait 2 days and go back to that, So, academics, we want to be perfect. It's just kind of something that comes with the territory. But I would say it's a lot. Sometimes it's a lot going on. Yeah.
Right. So how do you yourself, how do you personally, make intentional efforts to, prioritize your mental health or do self-care? How do you balance all these things personally and still be sane?
Oh, I beg. This school will not kill me. You will not kill me. I promise you won't. So if I'm overwhelmed, I will put it down. And I would say, hey, look, I am more important than anything than anything I'm doing right now, And also I've proven to myself in the past, it'll get done. And if I'm not in the right headspace to do it, it won't get done. So that's why I got to give myself that time. So I definitely say I won't allow this school to kill me. I won't allow this schoolwork to stress me out. But I care about the work. So that's where that motivation and inspiration to do the work comes from. Okay. But it's all about just realizing time management and being able to time it through because, if you wait till the last minute to write a paper, then, you don't have the grace to put that paper down. You don't have the grace to put it off. But if you're starting on this paper, 2 weeks ahead of time, you can put it back a day and continue to maybe write a paragraph for night. So it's all about, for me, it's all about timing. But in every case, I would always prioritize myself. I'd rather submit something late and, ask for grace in regards to my professor or my teacher, as opposed to really stressing myself out. I'm a big advocate against that, but I prefer to be on time. So I manage that time well ahead of time, deal with it on the back end. So that way on the front end, I don't have to deal with too much.
Okay. This is kind of a little bit off question, but you kind of talked about how there's you have a team and they have their research and you have your research and you can kind of be in each other's teams. Yeah. But what is the relationship between fellow students, fellow grad students, fellow colleagues in grad school? How is it different from relationships in undergrad between fellow students?
Yeah, so I think here in this space, we all want to see each other succeed. I want to see you get your PhD, and I hope, in that same way you want to see me get my PhD. I know that you're doing really good work and you're putting out good literature and you're helping your community. I want to see you do great. You know what I'm saying? So for UK specifically, I can't speak for other schools, but from my experience, it's been very much so collaboration and cooperative. If you win, I win. If I win, you win. So that relationship is very, very clear to know that if you're my colleague, I want you to do great. And there's no discourse there. At least there haven't been any discourse for me. So we're all rooting for each other to get fellowships. We are rooting for each other to get publications. And we even want to work together to help you get there. A research project is tremendously hard to do by yourself. You got to write it up. You got to collect the data. You got to analyze the data. You got to code the data. There's just a lot going on there. So to have a team to do it with you, and it cuts the process down in half. So I think I just think of collaboration when I think of what it looks like to be on this team. Yeah, so it's different from undergrad because in undergrad, you're on the same team, but then you feel like you got to compete in some regards. Yep. So you're competing for awards to get recognition. You're competing to get in within research labs. Where in this case, it's a lot different. We're already here. We're all here. We're all in this PhD program. What are we competing for? Because at the end of the day, we can compete all we want to, but you're going to get the same PhD that I get for the most part if you push through the program. So I think it's a lot less competitive because I definitely remember like feeling like I had to be slightly, a little shady during undergrad, and I didn't like that experience. So
Yeah.
I think now that collaboration piece with my colleagues, I love it. I love it a lot.
Okay, that's good. That's very encouraging. So now just kind of rounding up, what is something that you wish you knew before you started your graduate school journey, or what is something that you would tell somebody who's considering a program like yours?
Mm. I would say be intentional with what you want, and this and be intentional with what you want, but also um, and don't necessarily waver on that. So with me, I got accepted into maybe like 3 or 4 other PhD programs that I interviewed with uh, before I got accepted into Kentucky. And I knew, these people were throwing money at me, these people were throwing offers at me, but they didn't have what I wanted. For me specifically, I wanted to be trained under a Black professor because I know the research I do is very social justice and Black related. It's related to Black mental health. So I knew I wanted to have a Black advisor who can train me up to be a Black clinician. And with PhD programs, it's really hard to find a Black advisor. And that was something I had a strong I need there. But some of the people I applied to were white, and I had to because, it's slim pickings with PhD programs, at least in my experience it was. And I got accepted to a few schools before getting accepted in Kentucky, and like they were throwing money at me. They were saying, "Hey, like we want to know what you thought. What's your thoughts? Are you ready to commit yet?" And I'm thinking, bro, God, my prayers. You know what I want. I made this very clear. God. So if I have to go to a school with a white advisor, like I know you'll be intentional about that, but God, I prayed for it. Then luckily I got accepted with Dr. Hargan, and I said, "That's the teacher. That's the advisor I want." So, and looking at the stuff that she works on, such as healing racial trauma, researching Black mental health, the performing and working and organizing the Black healing circles that we do, just perfect fit. So I would say, just be intentional about what you want out of your program, and don't feel like you have to waver on it. I think if somebody gets accepted to a PhD program and they don't want it because they don't have something they want, such as funding or being social justice oriented, or focusing more so on counseling than research, or research more than counseling. I don't feel like you have to settle. You know what I'm saying? Because your time will come. And I think with this program being 6 years, like I'm not spending 6 years nowhere where they don't have what I want. And I think luckily I looked up and found a program that had exactly what I want. It was well worth the wait. I mean, I waited a whole gap year, and I waited to the end of application season to get accepted with Dr. Hargan. So I think that just be intentional what you want and know that you can do it. Like, trust me, if you get accepted into these programs, you can do it, and they're going to make sure that you can do it. So all the doubt that people are having about, well, I don't know if I can come to this program to do it. If you get accepted, you can, period. And that's been my experience here. Like, it's a learning curve, but like, best believe it can get done. And if, I'm saying, you got a support system here, you got people who did it before you, it can get done. So just knowing that, be intentional about what you want and be clear about what you want to yourself. And also knowing that, it can be done. You got this.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's very encouraging. Lastly, if you could just talk briefly about like the research, like some of the research that you do now in the doctorate program, and just a little brief thing so that we can know what some of the things you do are.
Brief. That's so funny. But so right now, so I mentioned already, and I'll tell you all the research projects I'm working on now. So I mentioned already that I'm working with Dr. Hargans, and she's doing a big sex study. And we're basically looking at everything related to sex and Black people. We did a huge survey. We got about 500 applicants where they kind of told us about their sex life, their preferences, their favorite songs, their relationship status, whether they like intimacy, and what does pleasure look like, and all of these things. They're super fun to code that. So now we're working on a paper right now where we're analyzing people's top 3 words to describe sex. And we're seeing what that looks like within the Black community. So that's the research project that I'm working on now. And then outside of that, another graduate student named Jordan, she has a paper titled the Double Pandemic Paper, where it analyzes COVID-19 and the anti-Black racism that we experienced in the summer of 2020. And we're looking into some factors such as critical thinking and advocacy and what that looks like within our youth and our Black people and how that shows up for them. And then my own personal research. So I'm doing two things. Right now, I'm doing a content analysis that I'm almost close to getting published. I got a few edits I need to make before I get there, but I'm doing a content analysis on Black men and marriage. And how does Black men know they're ready to be married? I think we hear it all the time where Black men say, "I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready yet." Okay, bro. So what does it mean to be ready? So that's a fun research. It's almost me search because I'm always saying I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready yet.
Right.
But what does it mean to be ready for Black men? How Black men measure, when they're ready to be married. And then the last one I'm interested in doing research on people who have Black names, or people who have African American names.
Mm-hmm.
Research has shown that these people are tremendously disenfranchised simply because of their names. And this is because of white standardization. Black names are ghetto, ratchet, and everything else but beautiful to people,
Mm-hmm.
So I'm interested in understanding these experiences because me personally, I believe Black names are beautiful. I believe they're worthy, and I believe they're cultural. And it's disheartening to know that, we're shaming Black names as ghetto and it's cultural names, People from Nigeria, they have different names. You know what I'm saying? People from Pakistan, they have different names. Asian cultures have different names. Every culture has a different name. But when it comes down to Black people, if they get, Daquan, then Daquan automatically is ghetto.
Yeah.
So it's like, bro, stop that. It's not. Daquan is a beautiful name. Laquan is a beautiful name. DeMarcus, all these names are beautiful in my eyes, and I think they're worthy. And it doesn't make a person any less qualified by having his name. So I know you said brief, but I kind of got
it's
into
okay.
my soapbox a little bit there.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, it kind of shows like research is not all the boring stuff that I and some other people usually think it is. So yeah, thank you for that.
Of course.
And that's the end of my questions. If you have any questions, I'm open. And if not, I just want to know how the interview process was for you. Like, how did it feel to answer these questions and think about these things?
It's good to reflect back, truly, because I told you, I didn't get accepted into a PhD program. And being a high achiever, that was a blow to pride. It was a blow to identity. Like I told you, I found worth in academia. So not getting accepted, put me in a bad place, truly, until I found out, it was God's plan. And I'm very glad I didn't get accepted, but it was still hard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So now it's good to look back and be at the end of my first semester. Granted, I don't want to speak too soon because I got 10 papers I got to write by the next 3 weeks, and it'll get done, but it's a lot to do. It's a lot to do, but knowing that I can do it. And I say that okay, I did 1 year, I can do all 6 or 5, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So for me, it's just showing me that I can do it now. Just looking back retrospectively and you asking me these questions, I know how people can feel during this application season and the pressures and everything and all that application season brings up. So it's been good to reflect. And if anybody's watching this, just know that you will get here. It's a journey, and just appreciate that journey for all it's worth. But I'm just sending encouragement, love, and perseverance to anybody applying to a PhD program, especially, the University of Kentucky, just best of luck, and reach out to me if you have any questions. I'm always willing to connect with anybody who is trying to be where I am, or where Dr. Hargans is, or where anybody that's in the program is. I'm just willing to connect.
Okay. Thank you so much.